Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit. Okay, all you friends and neighbors, you brothers and sisters, welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of October 26th. And as we mentioned at the outset, we're getting real close to the election. And I've invited two of the people who have been long involved with the show, Katy Hogan and Paul Draus, to come on and talk about where they see things at regarding the election with just less than 2 weeks to go. Katy's been working with Operation Swing State and going up to Wisconsin with big groups of people. Paul lives over in Dearborn, where he teaches at University of Michigan at Dearborn. And I'm going to start off with a quote I got from James Carville, who has been pretty negative a lot of the time and, sends panic emails. But today, which would be Wednesday, a couple of days before the show goes up, in the New York Times op-ed, he said, Harris will win. 3 reasons Harris will win. 1 was Mr. Trump is a repeat electoral loser. This time will be no different. 2, money matters, and Ms. Harris has it in droves. And number 3, my final reason is 100% emotional, and it's just a feeling. And he basically says that we're told how America is too divided, hopelessly stricken by tribalism, etc., but goes on to say he doesn't think that holds up. So I'm going to turn it over to you, who are people on the front lines. Katy, why don't you give us a little kickoff about Operation Swing State and what you've been doing and what you've discovered in the process?
Okay. Well, it's an unusual campaign. It's every campaign is different, and this one that's true of as well. I think when I was on the show a little earlier in this election cycle, I might have mentioned the enormous amount of volunteers that have come out of the woodwork, and that continues to happen. Last Saturday, when we had a room full of canvassers just before putting them on the road to go to Milwaukee last week. As I do every time, I said, how many people are here for the first time? How many people are doing this as their first canvass in their lives? Put your hand up. And again, last week, it was almost half the people in the room. And when that happens, I have 2 reactions. 1, I sort of have an involuntary sob of joy. And 2, I just start applauding, and as does everyone in the room, to have this new energy taking part in the election and, kind of grabbing their power finally. So Operation Swing State has really knocked a hell of a lot of doors, over 100,000 doors in both Michigan and Wisconsin. Last weekend, we had 1,000 people in Wisconsin alone from Chicago and environs. So we're now to the point where the leaders of Operation Swing State, in communication with some folks like us on the East Coast, are sort of in a competition to see how many people they can on the East Coast get into the state of Pennsylvania versus Chicago going into our 2 states. I was told, and I'm on the staff of this bunch, so I get told things, and then I say, yes, sir. That in the last 2 weeks, I'm to go to Muskegon, so I have not yet done any Michigan trips because they're north in the city, and we just go to Wisconsin. But now I'm going to do multiple days in a row in Muskegon. And maybe you can tell me what goes on there. I don't know, Paul.
So Muskegon, that's good, I think, because Muskegon is one of the cities. It's a smaller city in Michigan, but it does have a significant African-American population there. So I'm guessing this is turnout. You're trying to maximize your turnout in Saginaw, Muskegon, Benton Harbor, and of course Grand Rapids, Detroit, Flint, etc.
Holland.
Holland?
What about Holland?
Holland is a very conservative overall, very white conservative. And the west part of, I mean, we joke sometimes that you've got Michigan and like Western Michigan is basically Alabama. But it's half true. I mean, it's a very conservative area of the state, Western Michigan. In part, it has to do with religious tradition. It's the center of Calvinist culture. And so you have a lot of this, Christian conservatives there. Some of those Christian conservatives are genuine Christians and they're Democrats. But it does, especially outside of Grand Rapids, it tends to be very conservative. I don't know. I mean, this is a question with this election. Maybe you would know better than I would. I'm trying to figure this out too. I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but how many of those suburbanites are going to in the end vote for Trump? A lot of them are, no doubt, men in particular, but I think the question is women. And I think here in Michigan, I think it's going to come down to that.
Well, one of the major issues is in this election is gender. Abortions have increased around the country, even for women in states with rigid bans. And, the Democrats are placing a lot of hope on women turning out. Go ahead, Katy.
What we have run into in going to the doors, we will have on our little minivan that guides us, tells us which doors to knock on and who we're talking to at the doors. And we will have a female name on the address, and a male will answer the door. And we will say, we're here to talk to Jessica or Amanda or whatever. And he'll say that, well, they're not here. And then in conversing with him, of course, we'll find out he's a Trump supporter. I'm going to find this little thing I have over here that started a couple of elections ago, where you go into your nearby restaurants, gas stations, clubs, bars, whatever, and you go to the ladies' room, and inside the stalls, you put something like this, which basically says, "Hello, gorgeous." When you vote in November, your vote is your vote, and no one can see what you vote for in the polls. I hope you will consider protecting the right of women in your life by voting Harris Walls. And then there's the inevitable QR code. In any case, I've got these little Post-its that I'm going to hand out to a bunch of people in Wisconsin and Michigan in their remaining trips, and say, put them up, gals, put them up wherever they are. It's a hokey thing, I know that, but
no, I like it. It's creative.
I mean, the whole campaign is kind of creative in that way. For those of us who can't help ourselves but register people to vote, I bought these cards online, blank cards that I can send to all the 50-some people that I registered to vote this cycle, saying, your vote is your power. Don't waste it. Get out there. Early voting has begun, yada, yada. And on Monday, when early voting started in the neighborhood, we encouraged people to do the senior stroll to the polls thing, which has kind of taken off. And a lot of people are doing that, getting their friends together and walking over to the early voting place, having coffee after and talking trash about, the whole situation that we're in. And it's particularly given that we're talking to Paul in Michigan, the entire debacle in Gaza is turning all of us just sick at heart with what's going on. And with our money, our bombs, we should definitely stop arming Israel if they can't stop bombing hospitals, burning children alive in beds with IVs in their arms. It's just outrageous. And so folks, some of the young radicals in our neck of the woods, Michael, are saying, well, I'm not going to vote for Kamala Harris because of Gaza. And it's tricky. I have to say, I couldn't agree with you more, but I'm telling you, vote for her because it's too damn close. And it is too damn close. It shouldn't be this close, but it is.
Following the election, I think I'm assuming she'll win, but I'm an eternal optimist, as you both know. But I think that as soon as she wins, we got to have some major demonstrations and, bring people out. Let's go over to Paul sitting up there in Dearborn in his study. You were on the show probably in the last year because we were concerned about the Arab turnout in Dearborn. A lot of people were upset about Biden's position, and they probably still are pretty upset that Harris hasn't done more to show some support for the situation in Gaza. How about it, Paul? Tell us what you see, what you know, what you think.
So, I'm here in my basement bunker in Dearborn, Michigan, and I'm part of this community. I've been here almost 20 years. So very aware of the feelings around here. It's hard to know what particular people are going to do, of course, because with voting and behavior is not linear in that way. I know I did door knocking the other day for the first time, and I'll probably do it a few more times before the end of the election in my own neighborhood. Right. And so, door knocking, that's not easy, and for me, it's not, because it's like, it's a private thing. And that's actually what a lot of people say to me. It's a private thing. And I want to tell you how I'm going to vote. The first guy I found was not a person that was on the list. He had recently moved in. He said, yeah, I'm going to vote for Harris, although I have to go to the other side of town. He's from East Dearborn. For those of you that know anything about Dearborn, there's basically two sides, West Dearborn and East Dearborn. I live in West Dearborn, which is still predominantly, I guess you'd say, European American, although there's an Arab population in West Dearborn, as there is throughout all of Dearborn. East Dearborn is predominantly Arab American, Arab and Muslim. So this was a young man who had recently moved from East Dearborn to my neighborhood in West Dearborn, and said he was going to vote for Harris, and his voting place was in East Dearborn. But then I got a bunch of people who were like, we already know that we're going to vote. You're the third person that's been here, which I think is a good sign, right? Yeah. Even though I'd gotten a list that said these people had not been visited yet, but there might be multiple lists out there, right? So who knows? But they didn't want to tell me what they were going to do. I had one woman that said, I take this, it's very private. I don't share with people how I'm going to vote. She did come out and talk to me, so I thanked her for that. I had one, this is probably the most distressing for me, was a young woman, probably in her 20s, maybe 30s, I think with a child, who did tell me she's going to vote for the Green Party. And she said she thinks her husband is a Republican. So, there's one thing that they don't talk about it that tells you that, which is true in a lot of these households, I think. And I said, okay, well, were you a supporter of the Green Party or where the Green Party before this election? And she said, well, yeah, because what I was sort of getting at was this issue that's been raised about Jill Stein and the Green Party sort of popping up every 4 years when they're not really doing a lot of organizing work on the ground. They're not really visible in movement circles and things like that. And I don't know if you guys watch Mehdi Hassan at all. He's been very strong on this, speaking as a Muslim and the issues that are at stake here. But again, it's somebody's.
Tell our listeners who that is.
Mehdi Hassan used to be on CNN. I think he's originally British, Pakistan. I think he's Indian or Pakistani, Indian. But Muslim political commentator and reporter. He was on CNN. He quit CNN, I believe, over a conflict over his reporting on Gaza in particular, and started his own media company. He's an excellent reporter. He's very, very sharp. He's very sharp on the issues. He's extremely critical of the U.S. position and politics in the Middle East, especially in Gaza. But he's also very, very clear in terms of what's at stake in this election, with Trump versus Harris versus, the other options and so on. So I referred it to my son. My son is a practicing Muslim now. Many of his friends from Dearborn are young Muslim men and women. He hates what's happening in Gaza. He hates Biden as a result, I think. But he also realizes that, or is starting to realize that Trump is a terrible option. So he was thinking about voting for Jill Stein. I've been sending him some material, because these young men, I think, are going to, are the ones that come out and turn out. How they're going to vote could be in such a close election. It could be, a real factor, right? So, I mean, we're in the situation where everyone is saying this is the jump ball. It's a coin toss. It's a crapshoot, whatever you want to call it. I have these feelings of dread that come over me. I think, in terms of the Arab Muslim population here, probably half are not going to vote for that voted last time for Biden. Harris are probably not going to vote for him. I think maybe the other half will. But I kind of agree with what Michael Moore said on this. I heard him the other day. He said, listen, I can't go to somebody who's in my community, who's a Michigan resident, who's lost family in Gaza and Lebanon, and tell them, you need to vote for Kamala Harris. It's up to us to bring out the votes to make up that difference with other people, because sometimes people need to vote their conscience, and you can't argue with them on their conscience. I'm, I guess, more upset by a number of people I meet that, whether they're Trump supporters or they're undecided, just the information they have, how low quality it is, how little information they have, and then how much disinformation is really reaching people on all these different levels, whether, it's about, Biden sending money to illegal immigrants instead of to FEMA, or all the different things that get circulated, and that some of them stick, and or that Trump was really, really good on the economy and things are going to get better if Trump is reelected. That's the biggest one, I guess, that you hear. Probably the feelings that we all have about, why is it so close? Why are there people that can consider reelecting a man that was thrown out of office because of how horrible a president he was, and how much stress he induced in the entire population, and how he mishandled, a global crisis that he did face.
Let me jump in here. I think disinformation is one of the key things, and I keep wondering. I watch CNN and a lot of progressive outlets, or sort of progressive, and I wonder how people don't get it, but people aren't seeing any of that. A lot of them are just doing some kind of social media feed that they originally liked something, and they just get a steady stream of this kind of stuff. So I think that's a real issue. And then one of the things that I think is important, though, maybe we could talk about, is John Kelly, who was a chief of staff, who's actually Trump's longest chief of staff. He basically called Trump a fascist yesterday, or the last couple of days. And
he did it on tape. And he did it on tape, too. He was recorded saying this. I mean, he's the second one who said it. I mean, Mark Milley said that Trump was a fascist to the core, right? Yeah. So the question is this going to penetrate? I think what the Harris campaign has done, I think Harris is a politician. I actually like her as an individual and as a politician. I don't mind that she's a pragmatic politician. I actually think that's a good thing in many ways. But they've made a calculation. I think it's a cold calculation, but it's that they can lose progressives, Muslim Americans, Arab Americans in some places if they can pick up a certain number of suburban
Republicans,
women, educated folks, and Republicans that can't stomach voting for Trump, that do listen to things like what John Kelly says and what Mark Milley says and what other Republicans. So I think that's the gamble they've made. I actually have a good feeling today, sort of like James Carville, because I did attend the rally last night with President Obama.
Oh, yeah, you were at the Obama rally, and the rapper was with him?
Eminem introduced him, and it was a whole, and Big Gretch was there, Gretchen Whitmer, the governor.
Oh, wow, cool.
Who was very popular. It was 12,000 people packed into, the Huntington Place, which used to be Cobo Center.
Oh yeah, I've been.
Did they tell everybody to go knock doors? Did they?
That's it. Yeah, that's what it was all about: getting people to go out and get your neighbors, get your friends, get them to vote. But then I get into the lift afterwards with my wife and daughter, and it's a young African American woman driving, And she says, yeah. I said, we went to a rally and Obama was here. And she said, yeah, I think Kamala Harris was here last week. And I said, well, oh, yeah, she'll probably be here 3 more times. And the young woman said, yeah, why are they coming here so much? I'm like, well, it is a swing state. And she's like, I'm definitely going to vote. My mom is going to vote. We're going to vote. But I think it's interesting that, we have to remember that people that don't follow this stuff, they don't know about the Electoral College. They don't know about the fact that even though that Kamala Harris will win a majority of votes, probably without a doubt, that doesn't mean she's going to be elected president. Yeah. And that's why these particular states are so important in these razor thin margins. My optimistic hope is, I think, like James Carville, and I think Michael Moore said this too. He said that the power and mobilization of women in particular in this election, and women, especially Black women and educated women, are some of the most consistent voters, that it will carry Kamala Harris over the edge in this case. And I'm actually secretly hoping that it's going to be bigger margins than we think, because a lot of the people that are saying they're undecided at this point are going to break in the end, especially the crazier and crazier Trump gets. But again, I mean, we've seen that happen so many times, and it didn't seem to make a dent in his 47%. So it's too close to be comfortable. Okay. I do have an optimistic feeling today, but I mean, I'm glad you're out there, Katie. I'm glad all those folks are out there talking to people, because I think even if you flip or convince 1 or 2 people, it's demoralizing to go to make 30 calls and only talk to 2 people, or to knock on doors, have people not home. People tell you to go away. I don't want to talk about it. But if you talk to 1 or 2 people and you inspire, you convince them to go, or you encourage them to go, that's where the differences are made. And I think you're right, Michael. The money that is showing up in terms of the organization, in terms of the strategies that are being employed, and the enthusiasm is real. So if we look at the history of these things, the more likable candidate, the one with more resources, a better ground game, tends to be the candidate who wins at the end of the day. And Trump has got a dismal message. I don't
nothing
understand.
Nothing but dismal. We're going to be out of time. I just want to put in, look, people, we have 1 weekend, and then it's GOTV weekend. If you haven't done something yet, now's your chance. It is not too late. Some of the most important doors will be knocked in the next 10, 14 days and 13 days. And really, you want to be part of this. You definitely do not want to be there the day after we get the returns and say, gee, I could have done something. We have now to do it. And now also we're getting gas money for cars to do these carpools. We're getting gas cards, and they're going to pay for hotel rooms for people who stay in Muskegon for 4 nights in GOTV and just knock doors like fanatics all day long. And guess what? Blue states have to vote like their hair's on fire too, to get that margin that we want. We want 30 million votes between them. That's my dream, is that 30 million more Americans vote for my side than for the goofball. And it's still too many that are voting.
We need what they had in France, with the wall that emerged when they realized the real threat of this is a real authoritarian threat. He means what he said.
Let's hope we got it. I want to thank you both for coming on live from the Heartland. Katie, I'll see you in the next few days. Paul, we'll stay in touch. It's always great to see your face. I remember the early days of the Live from the Heartland show when it was you and me and Katie, a few other people being the hosts. We had a good time. Say hi to your family. Katie, I'll see you later.